Welcome to this new IEECP Lunch Seminar. We are the Institute for European Energy and Climate Policy, and today we present to you the Prospect Horizon 2020 project, enabling peer-to-peer learning in regional and local authorities to finance and implement their sustainable energy and climate action plans. Mia Dragovic is our presenter. Enjoy!
Hi everybody, I'm really looking forward to presenting the results of Prospect today. So we already talked about Prospect, and many of our viewers also might be familiar with it because it's an ongoing Horizon project that already included over 150 cities in the European Union. So we are really happy to have this great number of cities involved, and this presentation is all about them and how we can help them invest more successfully in their sustainable energy projects, and specifically through innovative financing. So as you see the title, it's what hinders local authorities in EU from financing and implementing sustainable energy projects. And this was our idea, to find out, as we have all these cities, how can we question their capacities or what state they're in, and what are those differences that make some cities more successful in these investments than others. So just shortly about the project, and then we will talk about this benchmark that gave us the results that made us make some conclusions to share with the cities. So peer-to-peer learning was done through 4 cycles, and basically we invited cities all over Europe to join our program and learn from cities just like them who already implemented some projects. So a few cities, one mentor and one or few mentees came together, and they discussed topics in one of the following 5 modules. So we divided the modules in public buildings, private buildings, transport, public lighting, and cross-sectoral module, and basically in whichever stage they are with a specific project they chose, we help them progress further. And here you can see how many cities got involved. So it's really interesting to see that, and this was when we had 125 cities. Now we have even more. So if you look at the outreach, it's basically 45 million citizens that are indirectly affected with the projects that we talked about in our program, in our learning program. The interest was large for energy performance contracting in the beginning, and as the project grew, we saw through the 3 years, we saw more and more interest in other modules, such as transport. Although we didn't find many cities who are experienced mentor in this, we see that a lot of cities would like to learn about this, and this is something to have in mind for the future period. We also see that still a lot of investments are being made in public and private buildings and public lighting, mostly. But as I said, through the years, interest grew for other topics too. And if you would like to see more specifically who were the mentors and mentees in our program, if you go to our website, there is an interactive map which will show you all these green icons, which are our mentors, and you can see the icon shows which modules they mentored in, and our yellow ones are our mentees. So we decided, as long as we have all these cities here, we want to have this to be a two-phase learning. So not only mentees learning from mentors, but we as project partners, we thought we could learn from them too. So what we developed is a set of questions that we asked to see to test their capacities and see if these capacities and their answers can tell us something about which capacities are more important for investing in sustainable energy projects. So we did this through this benchmark, but yeah, before I put 2 links here. So just to mention those, as you go on our website, I would encourage you to also look at the good practices. So this is something that will lead you to some of the both mentors and mentees good practices, and you can also check our participants database if you find some particularly interesting, so you can connect with the city that implemented this good practice and be in touch with them, learn from them. And there is a decision matrix tool for those cities that are not yet sure which financing instrument are available out there and which would be right for their project. So this is something you can do also free online. It's a short questionnaire and tells you which financing scheme is right for you. So to testing city capacities. The main question is, which would those capacities be? And it was really difficult. We started with, I think in the beginning it was over 60 questions, which we kind of wanted to get down to the main capacities. And we tried to see what. So the biggest problem we all know, if we had all the amount of money needed, everybody knows what to invest, how to pay for something, but there are so many areas to work on, and the key idea, if you want to start with something, is what should I invest in the most? Is it people? In which way? Is it should I outsource something? Should it stay in the city? And we believe that being closer with our results to this decision will help cities a lot to know where to direct their budget, which is of course always limited, as you will see from our survey. And so the process was to identify these capacities, then to develop from these capacities an online survey that we shared with the cities in our program, then conducting the survey, analyzing the results, and finally we had our final capacity assessment framework from which we could draw the results. And here's how it was structured. So I told you already, it was in the beginning, so many questions. We narrowed it down to 34 main questions, and we divided them into 3 areas, or axes as we call them. So we have attracting investments, which is the first axis. And basically here we asked about local strategy and commitments, their legislative and regulatory situation, economic situation, and the public stance. Then the second axis is about identifying and utilizing financing options. And the third axis is about the setup and monitoring of the sustainable project financing. So as we go through the results, we will go through each of these axes. So we will start with the first one. Basically, in your presentation, you will also see a graph. So whichever way suits you the most. So this is the results we got from attracting the investments. And what we can see here is that most cities show no default on debt. So most cities said they face no serious legal or regulatory constraints. Now this is interesting for 2 reasons. First, we have to be careful when judging these results because the cities in our study, they are already cities that are undertaking sustainable energy projects, or at least thinking about it. So these are more experienced than we guess the general audience would be. So this is something to have in mind. But still it is interesting because those same cities, most of them when they enter our program, they tend to say that there are legal barriers or that there are always some constraints outside of them. But what we found is that it's mostly about the time that they are willing to invest and the people that they can either outsource or inside people they can train. And most barriers can be overcome with some innovative financing schemes. It was really positive that the public has a good stance related to SECA projects, with 65% rating it the highest 2 ratings, 4 and 5. So there is this opportunity to also work with different kinds of financing, like citizen financing. And we also see that this is becoming more and more relevant, and cities are looking for solutions to involve citizens in financing their projects. And the dissemination of sustainable energy initiatives seems to be frequent in most cities, but public procurement procedures seem to lack the necessary regulatory framework. So this is one regulatory part that was missing. Again, as you see, when we ask them in general, there aren't many problems. When we go into details, we identify a few problems with regulatory framework or with ownership, but most of them can be resolved. Then we go to the second axis, which is identifying and utilizing financing options. And what we realized is that cities score especially well in financial support schemes, meaning they are available and they know they are out there. But again, we should be careful that these are cities that are already in our program, so maybe they learn through it through prospect. And the second bullet point is really interesting. So most cities exploit highly their budgets, so their overall budget is high, but only 18% of our survey participants have a sufficient annual budget for SECA. So even though it's a city that isn't necessarily any kind of financial problems, just the budget cities have is really limited for these kind of projects. So this is already one starting hurdle. If there isn't any commitment in the beginning about having money available to do projects like this, of course, even if you have trained people, it will be really difficult to do anything. And even though, as we said earlier, public stance is showing positive signs, there aren't yet many applied citizens finance projects. So this is something that is just starting to develop. Cities are trying to starting to talk about it. There are best case examples, but it isn't happening as much as we are expecting in the next period. And finally, for Axis 2 is about the staff. So the staff seems to be adequate. 39% of the cases say it's adequate, so that's quite high. But this staff does not usually have time to investigate opportunities that are out there. So even if they are trained and they're in the right positions to do something, if there is just limited amount of time, they're finding it hard to get in touch with all the innovative mechanisms that are going on in this sustainable field. And to move on to Axis 3, first to show you the graph. So this was the results of Axis 3, setting up, implementing, and monitoring sustainable energy projects. So here we asked about operational standards, M&V procedure, and available personnel. And we see that most cities, or half of the cities, have established monitoring and evaluation, also something to work on, because really important to actually see the results, because it can be a great motivator, especially in energy efficiency projects, when you see the savings, to maybe use these savings to invest in additional projects. And 41% of the participants follow operational standards established by the legislation. So again, more opportunity to work on that. And as we said earlier, there is in 37% of cases available personnel for administration, coordination, and monitoring. So, but most cities don't invest enough into training of those employees. So now we wanted to learn more from these results, and our partner, TESLab, the Techno-Economics Energy Systems Laboratory from the University of Piraeus in Greece, which is a partner in Prospect Project, was working on this benchmark, and currently we are developing a further study. So they conducted a CAD PCA analysis, which is basically a principal component analysis that helps you in situations like this, when you have so many variables and you're trying to decide which would be the most important for our condition and our sample. So with this, from all the 30-something questions we talked about, we came to the five principal components. So as you see on the right, these are the most important from everything that we learned about to be explained through this analysis. So they are city staff availability and capacity, obviously, so it's the people, city's communication and dissemination capacity, who the city is communicating with and who they can coordinate with, and city's macroeconomic conditions is the third one. This one is the toughest to change, of course, and to influence. Then there's citizen stance and finance, and city's regulatory conditions. The findings of this analysis, they do agree with the earlier findings that I just told you. And now briefly to mention the conclusions from both analyses. So again, we see that all the 82% of the cities have, most cities said they have sufficient budgets in general. All less than 5 have enough for SECA projects. By enough, I mean at least 5% of annual budget available for sustainable energy projects. And if we go even further and look at the cities that have more than 10% of the total city budget available for sustainable projects, we had, I think, only two of over 80 cities answered that they have more than 10% of the budgets available. So obviously this is something that cities should work on, if they're really serious in investing in sustainable energy projects. And again, maybe the main conclusion from this that we were happy to learn about is that even the cities that have less budget or that have more other constraints can be successful in developing these kind of projects. So regardless of the conditions, these projects can be put in place with innovative financing. The underlying condition for this is to have people available, and as we mentioned before, and I really want to stress, not just right people in right place, but the ability to employ more people quickly, readiness to train the people that the cities have available for this, and also readiness to realize that these projects take time, and there should be time available for the not just the preparation, but just investigating what kind of availability is there, what kind of innovative schemes to be able to go for the financing scheme that is best for this certain city. And if we go back to Prospect Project and think about what we tried to do there, this actually just pointed out to us that there is a great need for projects like this that will help cities identify those opportunities and help them connect with other cities that already did something similar to what they want to do. And finally, sorry, this is a little mistake, but I think you'll realize what is on the slide. So the title of this slide is "What is in it for the cities?" Because basically we did all this analysis, we're hoping to publish it, we're talking about it today, but of course this project is all about cities, and we wanted to return these results and return the favor of them giving so much data to us, which is really immense, the amount of questions they had to answer to go through this survey. And we're really thankful to them that they managed to do that. So what we did is we analyzed each result that we got, and we made a small conclusion on how do they stand on some questions compared to average mentors and average mentee reply. So this is just an example. An example was with this Greek city Agios Dimitrios, and it turns out that there are, what you can see from this illustrative picture is that this city seems to cooperate with other cities for sustainable energy projects a bit more and a bit better than average cities in this survey. But an area that this city could work on is the cooperation with non-traditional private actors. So we are hoping that this feedback helps the cities and that we will see a lot of future investments for sustainable energy. Thank you. There is an additional slide before we go to questions, just for those of you thinking, well, what are these innovative financing schemes that we have available now? We also have a lot on each of them on our website, but this is just a short list of what they are. And we are now open for questions, if there are any.
Thank you, Mia. Indeed, if anyone has a question, now is the time.
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien speaking. Thank you very much, Mia, for this great presentation, and the project seems very successful. I would have two questions. The first one: did you already, or did you plan to collect testimonies from the participants to the project, the cities that have shared experience? Because that would be really great for the future, and also to have multiplier effects, which goes to my second question. Did you have any insight about possible multiplier effects? As you said, in this type of project, usually you tend to get first cities that are already quite experienced. And did you get feedback from them that thanks to their experience, they became like examples in their countries or to other cities nearby, also because English can be a barrier to participate in European projects?
Right. So thank you, Jean-Sébastien. You identified exactly what a really big problem was, and that is the language. Unfortunately, with this being an English project, a lot of cities were just timid to take part. So yes, this replication is something we are hoping will happen, and we are making happen. Not only did the mentees go on to share with their other cities, but mentees that were really that developed their projects and really learned from Prospect, they came back through our program in additional learning cycles, and they became mentors. So from mentees to mentors, and also most mentees that are in our project by the end should be mentors, at least in what they learned in the project that they can share. So there is this replication. There is also, you asked me about the feedback. Yes, we are collecting testimonials. Actually, right now, we have half a year left of the project, and what we are planning to do now is go back to what they did, because for some cities it has already been 2 years since they were in our learning cycle. So we want to ask them what happened, what they developed. We didn't do this yet with everybody, but for sure there were already cities that we did interviews with, and you can find them on our website as examples. I think it's called good practice, or examples of good practice. And we make sure to really put out there everybody who did something good, and so others can learn from it. But this engagement is really difficult to find cities who are willing to learn in English, and they're willing to dedicate this time, because it takes the entire cycle is 6 to 9 months. And I just want to add one thing. You said that I guess you mentioned that the conclusion was that probably most of the cities who entered were already developed in what they're doing. Well, we were expecting this too. The reality is there is still a lot of place for learning the basics when it comes to innovative financing instruments. So there are undoubtedly cities are aware of sustainable projects through being in covenant of mayors, through developing SECAPs. But when it comes to financing, the knowledge is really low. This is why you can see that most of cities want to learn about EPC, because most of the times they might not even know other opportunities that are. So there's still a lot of place for development in this area. There's a lot of things available, but it seems that before this project and projects similar to ours, it didn't reach as many cities as it should if we want to reach all of our policy targets that EU set for itself.
Thank you, Mia. Any other question? No? If not, we will close today's session. I invite you, of course, to go and visit the Prospect website, because as Mia said in the introduction, it's really rich of material with a library of cases. And I invite you also to check our other lunch seminars to learn about other projects that IEECP is working on. Thank you, and have a very nice day.